to Durbania. I'm Durbin, and I am so excited to talk Star Wars. We got Episode 8 coming up real soon, and finally met somebody who doesn't just want to talk the original trilogy, but talk them in such a way that we build up to the release of Episode 8. So, talking about Episode 4, joining me today is Cody Curtis. How you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic. Hey, everybody in the Durbania Nation. Hello, Durbin. I have been so excited to do this. Not only talk with you, but talk about Star Wars in depth. It's my favorite universe of all time. One of my favorite trilogies of all time. I love Star Wars so much. I just cannot wait for us to start this.
Oh, I can't wait either. So here's the deal of what Cody and I are going to do. So clearly, Star Wars Episode 4 is going to be here on my channel right now because, you know, you're watching it. Next month in October, you can find our Episode 5 review on Cody Curtis's channel. Then, in November, you'll have Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, here on my channel. And we go back and forth until we complete this with reviewing Episode 8. And it is going to be a time of great epicness. So, nothing hypes me up for a new Star Wars movie like talking all the great and awesome classic Star Wars movies. So, Cody, I'm just going to turn this over to you here real quick, and you could just, first off, tell us about your channel and where we can find you.
Alright, but before we continue, one thing you forgot to mention is in December, right before Episode 8 comes out, we'll be also talking about The Force Awakens. Where you guys can find me, you can find me on Twitter at _Cody_Curtis or on Instagram at Cody_Lamro. Lamro because I was just recently adopted and that hasn't been changed yet. But you can also find me here on YouTube. I love talking about movies. Obviously, if you've been on my channel recently, you know I love talking about Stephen King. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is. And I love talking about Star Wars.
Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. This one is just a classic. I mean, you got the classic hero's journey in this. You have Luke Skywalker, humble origins, humble beginnings, no real super big ambitions. He just wants to leave the farm, be a pilot. He doesn't know what exists in his blood. He doesn't know what great calling is upon his life. And I think that's what I love about just the kickoff with Episode 4. Is just watching this guy that anybody could be Luke Skywalker. And he's got this epic journey ahead. I mean, what do you think about that?
I mean, honestly, I completely agree with you. Not only the whole hero's journey thing, Luke Skywalker, he's so well molded that he feels like a character that any one of us wants to be. Because there's always that one goal, there's always that one thing we're always searching for that we feel like is never out of our reach. And this story is so utterly amazing. One of my favorite shots from the very beginning of this movie is when Luke is just staring out at the suns of Tatooine. It's one of the greatest shots I think I've ever seen in my entire life.
It is a really good shot, and it's that whole longing look on his face as he's looking at the suns, because, you know, his uncle just said, you have to stay here a whole another year. And it's just like that whole look of longing of what else is out there? What else could I be doing with my life? Not even knowing that this was the last night of his old life.
Yeah, it's true. And, you know, honestly, one of my favorite, just to jump a little bit, one of my favorite aspects about Star Wars, about A New Hope, is it was one of the first films, as far as American audiences are concerned, to introduce a very strong and powerful female character in Princess Leia. R.I.P. Carrie Fisher, of course. She's gonna be missed for eternity. And one of the greatest things about Princess Leia is when Han Solo, let's face it, he's one of the greatest characters ever made. He's super sarcastic, always gives a bunch of crap to Princess Leia, and she dishes it right back.
Now that dynamic is so awesome from the very beginning. Like, it was really cool watching it last night. First off, my wife and I were watching this and going, did the writers at that time know that Leia was Luke's sister and that Vader was his father? Like, we were like, did they know that yet? But still, it was interesting to watch because, you know, Luke would be flirting back and forth with her, and there's a little bit of charm between the two of them. That's really gross to say that right now. But Han and Leia, they just had it, man. Like, from the beginning, that chemistry was so there between the two of them, and I think it's just one of the things, because you know how it is, like, when you're doing something, you just feed off the energy of somebody else, so it's like, I could just see Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher, like, them feeding off of each other's performances. It's like, the way that those characters are written, the way that those two actors were together, you could just tell that they built each other up. So, like, you could just see from the beginning that that was what was meant to be, Han and Leia. And it just, it's such a classic thing, and it's so awesome how well that worked together.
Exactly. And the funny thing is, looking back on it, having rewatched it before this, I really wonder how much of the dialogue between Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford, because he is Han Solo, I wonder how much of it was improv. Knowing how great those two chemistry was right off the bat, how much of it was actually written for them and how much was actually improvisation. That would be great to know.
Oh, yeah. Well, because I know that the most famous line in Empire Strikes Back, and I'll mention that when we talk about Empire Strikes Back, because I don't want to take our fuel from that one, but Harrison Ford improv'd it. So I wonder the same thing, like how much of that was improv. It's interesting, some of the special features I learned, where Harrison Ford wasn't really considered for anything. He was just a reader in the auditions, and then they ended up giving him the role of Han Solo, and it's like, I could see why. He brought something so special to that character. He brought something special between him and Leia, and, the whole dynamic with him and Jabba, which we don't get a ton of in Episode 4, but you get enough that, you get the dynamic there. And it's just the way that he would do that, and the way, like, you could see him and Luke kind of jabbing at each other and then starting to bond as it goes on. Like, Harrison Ford brought so much great stuff to that role of Han Solo, and then Carrie Fisher to her role as Princess Leia. It's just... Gosh, it's such a classic formula, and it works so well with Episode 4. No wonder this thing just took the world by storm when it first came out.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny because the chemistry between Carrie Fisher, Mark Hamill, and Harrison Ford, it's like the chemistry between Harrison Ford and Sean Connery and Indiana Jones, except times like a billion, over and over again. And the greatest thing about this trio is they add so much to the story, especially when they're going up against the greatest villain ever introduced into cinema, Darth Vader.
Oh, I have to say this, though. So after watching Rogue One, at the very end, that hallway fight where Vader comes in with his lightsaber and he's flinging people here and there with the Force, and he's like that whole awesome sequence. When you watch Episode 4 after that and he just sort of walks in the door, like that used to impact me so much more. And then there's that Rogue One scene where he's throwing people all around in that hallway. It's like, oh man, could you imagine if back in the 70s they had the movie technology we have now, and what that would have looked like when Darth Vader first entered the scene? Or when Darth Vader and Obi-Wan have that fight. Can you just imagine how different it would be if they had the technology we had now? Because I bet you both those moments would have been 10 times more epic. But, before it sounds like I'm jabbing the movie, I'm not. For this movie being made in the 70s, for this movie coming out when it did, that introduction to Darth Vader choking people and just, gosh, he was scary. He is scary. He's one of the scariest villains of all time.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting. I was actually talking with my parents the other day about Rogue One, because we went out, we saw it when it came out into theaters, and that scene with Darth Vader, I was like, so... was this what it was like when you saw him pop onto the scene in A New Hope for the first time? And they were like, yeah, this is exactly what it's like. And then, like you, I went back, I rewatched A New Hope right after Rogue One, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is a lot more, this guy is a real deal. This is a lot more terrifying than I thought it would be. Especially knowing the amount of depth that this character ultimately has.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that's one of the brilliant things about Darth Vader. I mean, he has so much depth, and there's so much more under it. I mean, I can only imagine if you're watching Episode 4, not knowing the rest of the lore that's coming down the pike, but just knowing that Vader was somebody who used to work with Obi-Wan, who betrayed Obi-Wan, who killed Luke's father. With just that is a really good mythology and some really deep layers, and enough to raise questions like, what made him turn against Obi-Wan? Why did he turn against everybody? Why did he kill Luke's father? Like, so if you were watching Episode 4 and not knowing what was coming down the pike, I can understand how that's just creepy. And then when you get to Episode 5, Luke, I am your father. Just that epic moment where it's like, oh, shoot. I mean, there's just so many layers that keep getting added to this guy. And the only time I didn't like it was the prequels. I did not like the prequels. I did not like seeing him as a kid. I did not like episodes 2 and 3 where he was just a whining crybaby.
Durbin?
Yes?
We're talking about Episode 4. One of the greatest trilogies of all time. I can't believe you brought up the prequels.
I know! But I meant to bring up the prequels as a comparison to be like, just in episode 4 all by itself, that initial introduction to Darth Vader gives you the chills on a level that watching him grow into Vader in the prequels just does not do. Like, the prequels missed the point of Vader. Like, they missed it. But when you start in episode 4 and let his lore begin there and hear the backstory that way through Obi-Wan and through Yoda and through all that stuff, it's so much more epic.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess that is one point to bring up about everything that Lucasfilm does, save for the prequels. This is an example of storytelling at its absolute best. I mean, and once we get down to the final battle to try to destroy the Death Star, everything within that scene when Luke is just going down the tunnel is some of the most intense filmmaking I think I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, it's such good stuff, man. And I'm watching this, like, I'm watching it last night to get ready for this. I'm just like, wow, like, this story's constructed really well. Like, we have a beginning here. We get to see who Vader is. We get to see the droids. We get to meet Luke. We get to see his situation. We're scared of Vader already. We already know the looming threat of the Empire within the first half an hour, and it's amazing. And then you just build in all this other stuff, the death of Obi-Wan, and Luke having to struggle with that, and hearing Obi's voice, maybe thinking he's going crazy, but obeying it because of the Force. And then the epic scene as they're flying through the trench, man. Like, sometimes I watch that scene and I forget this movie was made in the 70s. It looks so good. It might be that I'm watching the Blu-ray and they've touched it up 5 quadrillion times. But, I can't help it. It looks so good and it's so well done. And to think about that accomplishment for back in the 70s, dude, that's masterful.
I mean, one thing that should be noted, not only the fact that it's not just that those space battle scenes, it's just looking at this film from back in the 70s to today, it holds up. I mean, not in every single way, but storytelling-wise, some of the effects, the acting, everything is just so great. And the best part for me that Lucasfilm and Star Wars has done is it's built a community. It's built a family around everything in this story, in this universe.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And that is a huge accomplishment because you're not seeing movies and trilogies really do that today. I mean, you hear people raving about the new Planet of the Apes trilogy. You hear people raving about the Dark Knight trilogy, but nothing has made the community in the same way that Star Wars has. I mean, Star Wars was incredible what it did. And like you said, it's timeless. And not just because of the graphics or anything like that. Like, you could go back and watch the originals with all the original effects not touched up whatsoever and still have the same wonder and awe with it because of the actors, because of the chemistry with the actors, because of a story well told and a story well written, because so many things worked right. You could go back and watch that movie in its original untouched format and all of its dated look that might be there, and still it's timeless. Still it's amazing. So, yeah, that's such a great point about it being timeless.
Star Wars is one of the greatest things that was ever made. I mean, it's a story about family, love. It's everything that a great film should be, because it's not only a great entertaining movie, but it's a film with lessons. It's a film that is well written. It's a film that overall everybody seems to love for the most part. And most importantly, Durbin, we would not be having this conversation if it wasn't for Star Wars.
I know! What on earth would we be talking about? What kind of movies would never exist today if Star Wars wasn't Star Wars?
Exactly. Star Wars is one of the greatest things that was ever made. I say that over and over again, but I really mean it. I know it's been a part of my life, my childhood, and it's part of the reason why I am the person I am today. Number one, I wanted to be Luke Skywalker when I was young. Now that I'm older, I want to be more like Han Solo, but I look back at the community, the families, the relationships, the storytelling, and everything that Star Wars has provided everybody, and it's amazing. It might be one of, if not the greatest addition to Hollywood and cinema we've ever gotten.
Oh yeah, Star Wars is just incredible. So, that said, I could probably almost guess if you had to give it a letter grade, what letter grade would you give A New Hope?
Well, let's see here. I've talked my praises. I don't really have an issue with it. It's part of my childhood. I think it's a great achievement in cinema, in world history. It's brought everybody together in one big community. I think I'm gonna give Star Wars A New Hope an A.
All right. I think I agree with that, an A. I was back and forth between an A and an A+, but there's another Star Wars movie in this trilogy that I would give an A+ to for other reasons. So that's why I kind of have to hold back and give this an A. But this movie is amazing. I love it. And if I went and talked to you about my negatives, do you know what my negatives would be, Cody? Do you know what they would be?
What is your negatives, Durbin?
They would just be so utterly nitpicky that it would be too ridiculous. So I'm just going to let them slide because every movie has its own little nitpicky things, and so does this one. And who cares? It's Star Wars A New Hope. It started everything. This movie is amazing. So before we go ahead and close this out, Cody, did you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for Durbin. This has been an amazing opportunity. I can't wait to be able to talk more and more in depth about Star Wars, about the other films inside of this trilogy, about the other films in this universe. I love doing this. This was a great experience. So thank you for doing this with me, Durbin.
Well, thank you, Cody, so much for joining me here on Durbania, and I'm looking forward to next month joining you on your channel, which if you haven't checked out his channel, Cody, tell them where they can find you.
You can find me, it's just my name, Cody Curtis on YouTube. That's where you can find me. My movie reviews are there. Everything is there.
And he's got great reviews, so head over there, hit the subscribe button on his channel and show him some love and support. And I will be on his channel in October as we do this very same thing and review Star Wars Episode V, The Empire Strikes Back. I'm so looking forward to continuing this series, building on up to Episode VIII. It's just so exciting. So Cody, thank you again so much for joining me here on Durbania. And let us know in the comments, what is your favorite Star Wars movie? Can you even pick one? Or are they all just that good? Make sure to let us know in the comments. While you're there, hit the subscribe button to become a Durbanian and hit the bell so you're notified the moment I drop new videos and all kinds of fun stuff like that. I'm Durbin. This is Cody. Thank you for checking out Durbania.